You're listening to the TopCast, the original podcast for growth-minded instrumental music and voice teachers since 2015, with your host, Tim Topham. Our mission at TopMusic is to empower instrumental music and voice teachers to find and nurture their innate creativity so that they can teach lessons that are innovative, integrated, and inspiring, and that will have a positive, lifelong impact on their students. Join us each week as we interview teachers and creators from around the world and unpack fun and exciting ideas to maximize your teaching and studio business success. Welcome back to the TopCast, everybody. This is episode 400. I'm having a little party here in case you can't tell what that strange noise is. How on earth did we get here? This is 10 years since our first show aired in February 2015, and I know that quite a few of you listening listened to that first show and have listened to pretty much every episode that I've ever put out. To you guys, thank you so much for all your support. I thought today's episode, we're going to break it into two sections. The first one, I just want to talk a little bit about where the podcast came from and some of its iterations over time, because it's had a few different forms. And in the second part, I'm going to be inviting on the host of the TopMusic Piano Podcast, Rachel Ehring, to take over and ask me questions. A number of these questions have been submitted by you, so you get to hear the answers to your questions if you submitted those over on our social media, and also from Rachel more generally. We got questions on the podcast, on running businesses, on top music, on cats, you name it, we're covering it. And that's taking over. Rachel will take over about halfway through today's episode. But before that, I did want to talk about a little bit where this podcast actually came from and take you back to February 2015. What were you guys doing exactly 10 years ago? I was actually asked to interview John Bloomfield, who's a Taubman teacher. He was coming to Australia in January 2015 for a visit and a workshop. And so I thought it would be cool to interview this person. I'd been blogging since 2010, so I already had a bit of an audience and a lot of you guys knew of me. And when I was asked to do that, I thought, yeah, that sounds kind of fun. Happy to do that. And in fact, the interview is still on YouTube. The quality, I can't really say is amazing, but if you'd like to see it, it's there. It's a video interview, me and John Bloomfield. That was really the catalyst for me actually thinking, maybe this podcasting thing I could give a go. We'll put a link to the YouTube clip in today's show notes. But what happened after that interview was that John and the person who asked me to record that interview said, wow, Tim, that was really, I had a lot of fun and that was really good. You should consider doing more of this. And until that point, I really hadn't thought much about it, except once. So let me take you back to 2014. And most of you may not know this actually, unless you were listening really carefully or have been listening over the years. But the TopCast was really influenced. I think the first seed was sown when I was asked to go on somebody else's podcast back in March 2014. So we're talking 11 years ago, and we're talking before pretty much any other podcast for music teachers were out there. Does anyone remember the show that was run by Andrea Dow from Teach Piano Today? She had a podcast, perhaps only 10 episodes or so, quite small, and it's still there. You can still actually listen to these episodes. And Andrea invited me on the show on the topic of how to use an iPad in your piano lessons. And as I said, back then, there were basically zero podcasts for music teachers. So Andrea was absolutely a very early adopter. And in fact, I'm interviewing Andrea coming up. We'll be releasing that show to talk all about Teach Piano Today, Wonder Keys and the resources that they have. And it was great to chat to her about the fact that she was one of the first people to interview me and give me that experience of podcasting. So I do tip my hat to Andrea and the Teach Piano Today, Andrea and Trevor on the Teach Piano Today team for giving me that experience, which was then sort of backed up again the following year with that interview with John Bloomfield and people saying, you know, Tim, you're actually pretty good at this. You should consider doing more of it. And so I did a first preview test episode around February, even January in 2015. And in actual fact, that is also that clip on YouTube. We'll put a link to that if you would like to have a listen. that was just a test episode saying, hey, this is coming up. I needed to make sure the feed worked. Of course, the technology wasn't huge. Well, there wasn't a whole lot of technology out there back in those days. And the other reason that I decided to start the TopCast was I had been listening to lots and lots of podcasts for years, particularly people like Pat Flynn. Most music teachers probably wouldn't be aware of him, but he was a very influential online marketer, and he had a couple of podcasts actually, and he had a course or a YouTube video about how to set up a podcast. And I remember I actually followed that. I used his course to set up my show. So another hat tip to Pat Flynn, who I reckon would have helped hundreds or thousands of people do the same thing as me and inspire them. But I was also listening to podcasts from all sorts of different business personalities, online marketers, online influencers, etc. And that really gave me a good understanding, I think, of how to actually make this work and what you need to do. So I then put out episode number 1 with my great friend and piano teacher here in Australia, Daniel McFarlane. So I thought, why don't we just have a bit of a reminisce? Why don't we listen back to the very start of episode 1 of what it was known as then the Tim Topham TV show, where I was recording video as well as audio. So let's have a listen now. He runs a huge studio in Brisbane, teaching at least, I think last time I heard Daniel, 80 kids a week or more. How many is it these days?
About 88 at last count, I think.
88. And all of that while composing and publishing, running Supersonics Piano. He's a father to 2 very cute kids, Annabelle and Freddie. So welcome. I reckon we should just get straight started into it, Daniel. Thank you for coming along.
Oh, great to be here.
So this episode's all about composition. Really, I've been talking to a lot of teachers in the last few years, and a lot of them have come to me and said, how do you get started with composing? How do you take a student's idea? They come into a piano lesson, they play 3 notes, they're really excited, they've made their first piece of music. What do you then do with it? Or what do you do when you've got no idea, but you know that composing is great for students? Just firstly, might just talk about your music. How did you get into the composing?
Well, I did a little bit of composing through uni, but that was always in the framework of assignments. So compose in the style of this. So I think my mum has a collection of some of the little things I did as a kid, but there was nothing terribly serious. My first piece came around when I was just fiddling.
Now, the great thing about podcasts is if you would like to listen to that episode and you haven't, then you can access it still online. Wherever you're listening to this, just scroll right back to episode 1 and you can have a listen to the whole episode. We included a download with that episode, which you can also still find. There's some great compositional ideas in it still that I use to this day. So go and grab it. If you haven't listened to episode 1, it's really, really good. Although, when I sort of think about the journey I've come on over the last 10 years with podcasting, I do listen back and cringe a little bit at the way I did things and the technology particularly. One of the interesting things about life for podcasters in 2015 was that Zoom didn't exist and there was Skype, and that's about all. And in order to record a video recording of 2 people talking online, you wouldn't even think about it today, but it was actually hard to find stable recording software. It was one of the banes of my existence at that time. I also was struggling with internet speeds in Australia. We were really lagging at that time with good internet speeds, and I'd have dropouts and the software wouldn't record, or it would record one side, all of this kind of stuff. I tried so many different software packages. Eventually found ones that worked, and then eventually moved over to Zoom when that was released. I was a very early adopter of Zoom well before the pandemic, and that's been a nice, stable system for me to use ever since. The podcast has definitely grown and changed over the years. We've obviously changed the name a few times. We've had the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast. We've had the Integrated Music Teaching Podcast, Tim Topham TV. There's probably some other ones that you guys remember that I don't even remember, with different theme tunes and all that kind of stuff. We tried seasons for 1 year where I would do sort of 8 episodes and then have a bit of a break. But the focus has always been the same, trying to find interesting people with great stories to tell and great ideas for music teaching, and making sure that we mix up the solo shows occasionally with the interviews. I do prefer the interviews, as you can probably tell. I think probably 80% are probably interview style versus solo style, because I just like meeting people. And that was really the reason I started this whole thing. was just, I like talking to people and I wanted to share that. I wanted to share these cool conversations I was having with these awesome people around the world. And we've also tried to continue to focus in the TopCast through all of its iterations, a look at both the pedagogy and the business of running a music studio. And then more recently, as I look back, in 2023, we launched the Guitar Podcast. In 2024, we launched the TopMusic Piano Podcast. And now in 2025, we've just launched another podcast. You may not even know about it yet, but our new TopMusic AI podcast is now very much live and has been live since the start of January. Now, I'm really, really excited about this. This is totally different to all of our other shows. And so what I'm going to be doing is devoting next week's episode, I hope you don't mind, to this new AI podcast. And I'm going to be bringing on the host, Tara Wright, to talk about it. We'll also go into some of the basics of AI in next week's episode because I think it's just important to cover some of the basics so that you're able to engage with that show. So you can grab that show on whatever platform that you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, whatever platform you use. Go and find it, search for a TopMusic AI podcast. If you can't find it there, then head to our main website, topmusic.co. You'll be able to find out more details about that. It also has a companion newsletter, which is a new thing that we've started this year as well. Weekly newsletter companion to go along with the podcast and go into more depth and give you the prompts and things that you need for that. Now, if you're not sure what a prompt is and you're a little bit overwhelmed by AI, then tune in next week for that episode. And I do promise that we'll be resuming Tara's course that we've been starting the last few weeks after next week's episode. Now, speaking of the TopMusic Piano Podcast, I am delighted to be joined today to celebrate this milestone with the host of the TopMusic Piano Podcast, Dr. Rachel Ehring. Welcome, and thanks so much for joining me.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Tim. It is an honor to be here with you today, and congratulations on 400 episodes. That is an amazing feat. I can't even imagine.
Thank you.
Yeah. So to celebrate the 400 episodes, we're going to see if we can ask you 40 questions in the next, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes or so, which means these have to be rapid fire questions. You can't dwell on any of them. I know
so
that's going to be hard. I know. And why 40, you might wonder, because we decided that 400 was just a few too many. So some of these questions were submitted by listeners on our social media. Some of them were submitted by the TopMusic team, and then I threw in a few extras of my own. So what do you think? Are you ready?
Whew. All right, I'm ready. Yes.
Okay, so I've divided them into 5 categories. The first category is podcast related. So first question, which guest were you most nervous to interview?
Oh, that's probably an easy one, actually, because I did 2 celeb, in inverted commas, interviews, and one of them was John Schmidt from the Piano Guys. That was my most nervous one. I was actually most nervous, not about talking to him, but about the technology just breaking midway through and me losing it.
Is there an episode that stands out in your mind as one of the best episodes?
You know what? I don't think I could nail down any one episode because I'll put out an episode and I'll think, oh, yeah, that was okay, but it wasn't amazing. And people will go, wow, that was amazing. I got so much from that one. And there'll be another one where I'm like, that was so good. And then people haven't responded so well. So it depends. Everybody is listening for a different things at different times, and it always changes. So I'm sorry, I can't answer that one. That's just too hard on 400.
Okay. What is the best part of being a podcast host?
Oh, no, that's an easy one. It's getting to chat and meet the coolest people around the world and just learning from them. And I know that you will, I'm sure, experience the same thing. And anyone I've spoken to who started a podcast, the best thing is you just get to chat and have an excuse to chat and contact some great people around the world and share that with everyone. That's the best thing.
Yeah. And you get to learn from these people for free, It's great.
Yeah, exactly.
What is something that people might not know about being a podcast host?
I think it takes more work than you think. So for every interview that I've ever done, I always prepare, I research, and then I propose questions. I put them down. It's not off the cuff. I'm sure people know that it's not off the cuff. It is prepared and planned. And that takes time. Every episode takes time, and then you record it. So I think that's the thing that people might not quite realize, that the planning that goes into finding the guests, contacting them, booking them, and then coming up with the actual content for the show.
Have you ever had a disaster of any kind during recording?
Look, to be honest, in 400 episodes, there's only been a couple which I've recorded and haven't published because they just, for whatever reason, it just didn't flow. I didn't feel like it was quality information, or the guest perhaps was a bit too nervous. And a lot of guests are quite nervous when they come on the show, and I try and relax them as much as I can. But in a couple of cases, that didn't happen. So no one would have heard it or found out about it, because we obviously these aren't live, they are edited. But that was probably the biggest couple of challenges, I guess.
Do you have a dream guest that you haven't interviewed yet?
Oh, so many, Rachel. Yes. Elton John, obviously. I do have a wish list of big celebs, and I tried. Coldplay, I would really like Chris Martin from Coldplay, Billy Joel. Those big names would just be so cool. And everybody listening, I have tried and tried. They are so hard to connect with through their managers. There are so many gatekeepers. But if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, Tim, you've got to try and do one of those, or have an even better idea, then let me know and I will try again.
All right. What advice would you give someone who has done maybe, let's say, 50 episodes of a podcast as a host?
Well, huge congratulations, firstly. Massive congrats. And now you just got to keep going, because clearly you enjoy it enough. I think anyone that can pass, I think 50 episodes is actually a pretty good milestone to say that, you're doing a great job. And the thing is, have hope. Even if you're not getting a lot of downloads, they build over time. They just rack up because it's evergreen content that people can listen to anytime. So hang in there, and well done. Huge kudos to anyone that's got to 50 episodes.
Yeah. And I know this isn't about me, but I have to add that my previous podcast that I was doing, that I started, my dynamic piano teaching podcast, it still gets downloads every single week, even though I'm not doing new episodes anymore, which amazes me.
Yeah, there's no algorithm that, you have to post weekly for a podcast to get listened to. It will just be found. So yeah, keep it up.
What do you wish you would have known when you started the podcast?
Technology doesn't matter that much. So I think a lot of people go, oh my goodness, I need soundproof rooms and amazing microphones and all of this. No, you really don't. I started in my living room with a very cheap microphone from Amazon. I recorded videos of them. The hardest thing for me when I started 10 years ago almost was the technology, because Zoom didn't exist, and it was all this mashup of various different technologies that barely allowed you to record video. So that was the biggest challenge for me starting. That technology doesn't matter. It's the same with YouTube. Just get started. Just start putting content out there if you're going to start. Don't worry too much.
All right, we got through the first category. The next category is teaching and piano related. So the first one is, can anyone learn the piano? And the follow-up is, why or why not?
Yes, I think they can, because there is always a way to connect with what a student wants to achieve. So if your question was, can everybody get to the point of playing a Chopin ballade, or even something far simpler, a 2-page piece by Bach, I don't know, something, I would say no. That could maybe not. But I think everybody can play piano with guidance to do something that they really want to do, whether that is just sing along or accompany a friend, play some chords, improvise very simply, whatever that is. I think everybody can do that up to a point. Yeah.
What's your number one tip for a newbie teacher?
Well, become a member of TopMusic Pro, obviously. No, look, in all seriousness, I think the best advice is to be part of an organization or a community of some sort. It doesn't have to be ours, of course. But just being surrounded by other people who you can ask questions of is enormous and will give you so much help and guidance and support. So your local MTA, MTNA, various online groups, try and find some people to help you, because you will have that imposter syndrome, even if you're quite a talented performer on your instrument. Sometimes you just need to be able to run some questions by somebody.
Do you have a piano warm-up routine?
That's a good question. Yes, I do, actually. So I split my warm-up between technical work, i.e. scales, arpeggios, and repertoire, challenging bits from repertoire that I'm learning or have learnt before. So like the coda of one of the Scherzi by Chopin, I love using as a warm-up, and scales. Scales, I also have a four-finger exercise that I've put on YouTube before, if you're interested in that. Four-finger exercises that use fingers 2 to 5 and then 1 to 4 in 2 different sets. And I also like doing a bit of octave work and also what I call four-finger arpeggios, which I was taught by one of my teachers. So if you, a lot of arpeggios in C would go C, E, G, C, and your thumbs go under and you go up. I like adding the seventh. So C, E, G, B, and then C, E, G, B flat, and then C, E, G, A, then C, E, G, A flat. Uses all your fingers, makes you concentrate a bit more. And then you can try and do that in C sharp. Not so much fun.
Okay, this was submitted by Carly. If you could own any piano in the world, what would it be and why?
Oh, that's a great question. You know, I really have always... Oh, there's so many. So I have to say Shigeru Kawai are phenomenal instruments. Anytime I've played one of those on a concert hall stage, they are phenomenal. So that's up there. But I've also, over in Perth, in Western Australia, there's a conference that happens there every now and then at the Conservatorium, and they have a Fazioli. And it is, I've never played one before. It's the only one I've ever played. And it is absolutely gorgeous to play. Actually, you know what? I'm going to add one more. And I've only played one of these as well, and that's a Stewart & Sons. They're an Australian, the only Australian piano manufacturer. And I've only played one of those as well, and it was amazing as well. So, there's three.
All right, this is from Charlene. How can teachers use iPads to assist in teaching?
Good question, Charlene. So I think when it comes to any kind of tech, it needs to be in support of what you're doing. So a better way to think about tech is, okay, I've got a kid who's struggling with rhythm and the flashcards I'm using aren't working. How can tech help me? What app is there out there that can help with this? I prefer that way of looking at using iPads and apps rather than, okay, I've got an iPad. Everyone tells me I should be using technology. Let's force this in front of a child for no reason. Now, of course, playing using games and things is great from time to time, but I think it's just a great add-on tool when there are challenges. And I think there's great apps for rhythm reading, note reading, sight reading, and things like that. I also piano. I still love Piano Maestro. I think it's a great app for just note reading, just getting kids actually sight reading regularly. But the other way I think you can use an iPad in your studio is with GarageBand. If you are doing any kind of composing with a student, GarageBand on an iPad, not the desktop, the laptop version, the iPad version, is so easy to create these rich, warm, cinematic string background sounds that can just elevate a student's composition hugely. And I've got a video of that. It's either on YouTube or inside our membership about how I use GarageBand. No, I think we've got a course on it, actually. It's such a great app for that. And that's one place where I would recommend, hey, you can actually bring it out to a student and say, wow, let's try this.
All right. What's your favorite piece to teach and why?
Oh, how can you choose one piece, Rachel? No way.
One of your favorites.
Wow. Okay. Look, I have always loved, and I reckon there's lots of teachers out there who will probably nod their head, the Bergmuller Ballade from Opus 100 is always a fan favorite. It's fun to teach. Kids love learning it. It's a bit like solfeggetto, but in a more thematic or storyline kind of way. Why do I like to teach it? I like to teach it because it's very evocative of like a film, or what's the word? You probably know the word, Rachel, that for music that tells a story. Programmatic, is that what it's called?
Yeah, I think so.
Going back to my
That sounds
university
right.
days now, and I think it is like that, and it's great fun to see that piece come alive when a student tells a story through that music. It's just, that's a golden piece.
We're moving on to business-related questions. How is Top Music still relevant to all levels of teachers?
Well, we work super hard to try and stay both relevant with what's happening today, hence our new AI podcast and things like that, which I'm going to be talking about next week, I think, but also relevant to teachers who are just beginning, but teachers, we have many, many teachers on our lists, on our socials and in our membership who have been teaching for 20, 30 years and who are continuing to learn new things. So I think it's about making sure that what we create is things that we hear teachers asking us about. That's why we're bringing out a Canva course, for example, this year. That's why we've got the Hiring Teachers course coming out. In fact, it will have just come out by the time this has been launched, because we're getting questions from teachers about these various aspects. And we do try and balance that business and the pedagogy side of things. Did I answer that question, Rachel?
Yes, I think you did. What is your biggest business goal for 2025?
I would really love, my bigger vision for Top Music is that it becomes a hub for all instrumental teachers of any instrument and voice. And we have lots of teachers of multiple instruments inside our membership already, and we know that. But I would love to create more resources for all of those other teachers by finding the people around the world who are already creating these great courses on trumpet and drums and voice and bassoon and kazoo and whatever it is, so that we can be a one-stop shop really for any instrumental teacher, and particularly those who are teaching multiple instruments. So that's a big goal for me this year, is to start expanding. We've really embedded ourselves in piano because that's where I came from. We've launched guitar as well, and we're working on building that up more this year. And as I say, I'd really love to introduce things for string players, string teachers, voice teachers, etc. So that's the goal.
What's been the most rewarding milestone for Top Music so far?
Oh, okay. There's been so many. Could I give you a personal one as well as maybe a business one? I think because the thing that immediately comes to mind is the opportunity to be keynote speaker at MTNA last year, 2024. That was a massive personal goal of mine. I still remember attending the first MTNA that I went to in San Antonio, and watching that. I wasn't speaking or doing anything, and thinking, I want to give that speech at some stage in the future. And then I got that opportunity last year. So that was a huge one for me. And really was the culmination of an enormous amount of work and networking over the years and just building relationships and things. So I think just having a sense that what I'm doing is having a positive impact around the world. When you start a business, as many listeners will have, you really at the start have little idea about whether it's actually having much of an impact. And you're kind of bashing your head against a wall for a long time before things gain traction. And it's really demotivating, and it's when a lot of people quit. And I experienced that at the start as well. Certainly, it's been lots of ups and downs along this journey to build Top Music to where it is now, and there continue to be. But I think that point at which you start receiving incredibly heartfelt, life-changing feedback from teachers who you're trying to help, and which was the real motivation for me beginning this whole thing at the start anyway. When you start receiving that is the biggest milestone. That means that what you've done, what you've created, has had an impact, a positive impact around the world. And that was always my goal.
What's a great piece of business advice that you've received?
Read lots of books, listen to lots of podcasts, and turn off all your notifications from social media, and don't get sucked into absorbing and watching lots of content. You've got to be a content maker. And I tell my kids this all the time, although it never
They don't listen.
They never listen. My son still lies on his side and just watches TikToks and Reels. But I've always believed very strongly you need to create more than you watch, at least at the start. And it takes a lot of effort and time, but that's a huge one. But you know what? Ultimately, perseverance. And there's lots, aren't they? And flexibility, I was going to say as well. We continue to innovate here. It's why we brought out a new podcast. It's why we started your podcast. It's why we're continuing to bring out new courses. It's why I want to expand to new instruments. I mean, we're always changing, and that's the other thing that you have to remember to do. I don't know whether, I think this is all advice that, because your question was the advice you were given. These are all things that I've absorbed over time. Coming back to that start, by listening and reading. Podcasts are great for learning.
Yeah, they are. Agreed. What is the best part of your job?
Oh, there's a few parts of it. One is working with an incredible team. The TopMusic team, who are all around the world, are the most amazing humans. They really are incredible. And I am so lucky and blessed to have them helping with my mission to help music teachers. So that is an absolute joy. And yeah, I can't thank them all enough for all that they do. So yes, that's a huge thing. I think another great thing for me personally is being able to have flexibility around my work hours and being able to work from home and things like that, spend time with my cats. But also more seriously, we have 2 adopted children, and just being able to have that flexibility, as a lot of music teachers do, particularly during the day, to be able to change up, take them to an appointment, pick them up, do things like that, I think has been really critical in the last few years while we've been raising these boys.
Okay. In your opinion, what is the most valuable part of the Top Music Pro membership? So
I'm going to give you 2. Maybe you can give your opinion as well. So one is the courses. The courses are amazing, and we have covered so many different topics. I mean, we've got 60 online courses, I think, with probably a third of them being business related, 2/3, or maybe a quarter, and 3/4 being pedagogically related. The other one's the community. Just the sense of help and support that all our members give each other is so good. And tribute to, or kudos to all of our members who are so happy to share and answer questions and all of those things. I remember when I began, I used to talk about the closed door mentality of teachers, classroom teachers in particular. I used to be a classroom teacher. You'd shut your door. No one's getting my resources. Go and do your own thing. I mean, that has changed in the last 10 years hugely. We're all open door teachers now, much more so. And I really thank our members for being that. Could you put the courses over the community or vice versa? I think they're just so interrelated.
I think so. Yeah, those are the 2 things I would have said as well, as the courses and the community.
Yeah, cool.
All right. Alicia submitted this question. What scared you about taking the leap and creating this business?
The scary thing when you're starting and you get to a critical point where you have to decide whether you give something else up, i.e. other work, that is a really scary time because you're risking work and income for something that may not work. So that, I still distinctly remember that. It was May 2016 that I started thinking, we'd launched the membership and we could see trajectory. I've been blogging since 2010, so I was already 6 years into this, but I was teaching full time and I couldn't keep up both. And one had to give. And obviously this is something that you've got to work with your family and your partner and things like that, as I did. And we eventually came to the conclusion that if I didn't try this now, I would forever regret not trying it. And there wasn't an opportunity to, we'll give it another year. I mean, I had to do it now because the momentum had built. That scared me. Yeah, for sure. And it will scare anyone who turns their side hustle into their main hustle. There comes a tipping point, and that will always be risky. So it's just a matter of mitigating the risk as much as possible, building up enough that you can see that chances are this is going to work.
Is there a book, speaking of books, is there a particular book that has had a big impact on your business?
Yeah, that's an easy one. .com Secrets by Russell Brunson was seminal in my ability to build this business. And I remember reading it on a plane to speak in England because I still have the menu that they gave me in economy as the bookmark in that book. It's on the shelf over there. It's now a part of a trilogy of books. Russell Brunson is is a pretty incredible online entrepreneur, taught me a lot about funnels and how to build the kind of business that I'm running. So if you are interested in online business, then yeah, would be my recommendation.
All right, we're over halfway, and now we get to do the fun ones. So this category is
I found the other ones fun too.
Fun. Well, yes, but these I put fun in the title of this category. All right, can you juggle?
Yes.
All right, what do you eat for breakfast?
Varies depending on if I do exercise. If I do exercise, I'll tend to maybe have egg, spinach, mushrooms, something like that. I save bacon only for the weekends. I'm good. Otherwise, muesli. Or granola, you might call it in America.
What is your favorite place outside of Australia that you've visited?
So many. I think it has to be Nepal. I trekked to base camp way back in early 2000s, and it has to be one of the most memorable experiences of my whole life.
If you weren't a piano teacher, what would you do?
Realistically, or what I would love to do?
What would you love to do?
I'd love to be a helicopter pilot.
All right. Is there another instrument you've always wanted to play?
Yeah, you know what? I find myself, I think I am a bit weird like this. When I listen to music, I tend to hum bass lines, which is great for understanding chord construction. It's something I try and teach my students. But I don't think most people do it. They'll hum the melody. I love bass lines. So I think I should have tried playing the bass at some stage.
All right. Well, it's never too late, right?
That's true.
What would listeners be surprised to learn about you?
Well, I might have given away the fact that I have 2 adopted sons. Not everyone's going to know that one. Not everyone will know that I'm a fairly mad, keen cyclist. So, yeah, over here in Australia, we are known as mammals, middle-aged men in Lycra. I don't know if that's an American thing as well.
No, I don't know.
I hate calling myself middle-aged, but, well, effectively I am because I don't feel it. But I love nothing more than long rides. So, 100Ks, no problem. Hanging out with other people, meeting people on the rides, coffee and those sorts of things. Another thing most people won't know about me is that I'm very DIY kind of mindset. So I love fixing things. I've always done that. My dad taught me a lot when I was younger. So if something breaks, I'll try and fix it before throwing it out. I'll love pulling things apart, working out how they work, that sort of thing. I have that brain.
All right. So this next question is from Amy, and it has 3 parts. She says, what is your drink of choice? And she wants to know for breakfast, during the day, and adult beverage. So 3 drinks of choice.
Okay, breakfast. Actually, tea. I tend not to drink coffee till sort of mid-morning. So rest of the day, water. Literally, that's all I drink. And adult drink, gin and tonic is my favorite.
All right, that's a good one.
Although, Rachel, I feel like I'm getting to an age now I should start drinking brown spirits, whiskies and rum, not rums, whiskies, I guess. Like
Scotch,
I feel like
maybe?
Scott, yeah. But I've tried it. I'm like, no, it just doesn't work for me. Maybe it'll happen. I don't know.
It might. All right. What's one thing on your bucket list that you haven't done?
Got my helicopter pilot's license. I've actually started having some lessons. I would really love.
Really?
Yeah. It takes you, because it is so complicated. Well, at least for me, as a beginner, I can't think of anything else. It takes me right out of my brain, and it's just fun learning something completely new. So that is on my bucket list. So my bucket list would actually be to be able to fly my family to, some cool farm or something for a nice lunch or whatever at some stage with my license.
So why a helicopter and not a pilot's license? This isn't one of the questions. I'm just curious.
No, planes are boring. Yeah. When you start looking into just how complicated helicopters are, and anytime, because I've tried flying both, I don't know. I just think fixed wing aircraft are just fairly dull, really. With a helicopter, you've just got a cacophony of opposing forces you've got to try and manage. And the fact that it even works is crazy, really. So, yeah, that's what I like. I just think it's cooler too.
It really is.
And by the way, there's a teacher, I think she's in Alaska, who's followed me for a very long time. I think her name might be Rachel, actually, who also is a helicopter pilot. And I remember seeing that way back when I first started and thinking that is cool. It's actually been on my bucket list ever since I was a teenager. I've always wanted it.
All right. That is not on my bucket list. What's the most adventurous thing you've ever done?
Oh, look, it probably would be, sorry to say the same thing, but trekking to Everest Base Camp. We did it in winter on the off season, and we did it unsupported. So we didn't have Sherpas or anything like that. And so it was freezing, but it was also lovely because it wasn't crowded or busy. But that was probably the hardest thing. I lost kilograms. Like I came back so strong-legged, but so skinny. It was really tough, but just I'd always wanted to see Everest with my own eyes, and wow, it is amazing.
Wow. All right. What song could you listen to on repeat for an hour?
I don't think I could say a specific song, but another thing that will surprise listeners, although I might have talked about it once before, is that I like EDM music, so electronic dance music. And I like listening to it. It's really funny because a lot of other people around me say, how can you chill out to this? Like, it's designed to make you dance. But I can lie on my bed and listen to this and just zone out. And I love it. So I'm copping out, Rachel, but I think as for a genre of music, that would be the genre I could listen to and do listen to a lot. Don't know if I could come up with one single song. Could you do that? Putting you on the spot now.
No.
That's pretty tough, isn't it? I think most musicians, music teachers, I mean, we love so many different types of music as well. I look at my kids and they're into like one type of music really, and that's it. But music teachers, we love so much different music, different types of music. I think that's a super difficult question. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. All right, we're almost done. The last category is cat related.
Okay.
So true or false?
Where are they?
I don't know.
They haven't annoyed me today.
I know. Maybe when they hear the questions, they'll show up. True or false? Cats are better than dogs.
Oh, true, of course.
Okay. How many cats do you have?
2.
Okay. What breed is your cat?
They are Australian mist. So they're the only Australian breed that's ever been formulated, or whatever the word would be. And they're a combination of Abyssinian and Burmese predominantly.
I think maybe our team member Georgina might have come up with these because she asked, does he always look grumpy?
No, Bronson. So Bronson's the white, lighter coloured cat. Does he always look grumpy? Yeah, he does kind of. He's got a bit of a grumpy cat face. But he's not really. He's a puppy dog.
Okay.
A puppy dog cat.
Does your cat have a favorite genre of music?
Well, I tell you what, anytime I start playing, he will generally jump up via the keyboard onto the music rest, onto the top of the piano, and sit and fall asleep, sitting upright, which is kind of weird. It's what cats do. He definitely likes Chopin because, that's the thing I mainly try and play and practice. I think he likes it.
All right. And last question. If your cat could talk, what would his first words be?
Georgina, if these Georginas, these are hilarious. It would be, it'd be like, feed me. All I want is food.
Stop playing Chopin.
Yeah. Can I have a new genre, please? Oh, Rachel, that's been so much fun.
Well, thank you, Tim. We did it. We did really well. You did really well. Keeping it succinct and rapid fire. Thank you. I learned a ton about you today, and I'm sure our listeners will as well.
Thank you. And thanks so much to you for all of your incredible episodes. If anyone's listening to this and they haven't subscribed to the Top Music Piano Podcast, which Rachel hosts, go and do it. You are missing out. She is amazing and the guests are cool and it's just a great conversation and you're going to learn heaps. So yeah, go and check that out. And thank you, Rachel, for all of your contributions.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Well, teachers, thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey. I can't believe that 10 years later, I would still be here doing this and still helping teachers and still have listeners. I know that lots of you are continuing to listen and do enjoy the time that you spend each week with me, and that means the world to me. Thank you so much. Thank you for all the people who have reviewed the show over the years or who have just emailed us feedback, or me personally to say, Tim, thank you so much. That really spoke to me. That was moving. That made me change my opinion. I loved it when I got to try this out. Thank you. A huge heartfelt thanks to everybody who has been a supporter of this show, especially to all of you people. You know who you are out there who have listened ever since episode number 1. I know who you are. I know who some of you are. And thank you. It means the world to me that you would support this show for such a long period of time. I can only hope that it's made a significant difference to you personally and you in your teaching and your studio business. And of course, if it has, I would love to hear from you, or leave a review. It's always lovely to read them and to hear from teachers, especially the ones who might be lurking in the background and who I've never heard of, but who've perhaps been listening for a long time. I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to send us an email, support@topmusic.co. Thanks, everybody. That's the end of the show for this week. Thank you so much for tuning in to the 400th episode. Will there be a 500th? I can't even fathom it, but there probably will be. As long as you guys are finding it useful, I will keep on going because I do enjoy it. So next week on the podcast, I'm going to be joined by Tara Wright, and we're going to be unpacking this new podcast we've created, the Top Music AI Podcast, and also the companion newsletter. We'll talk about how it works, give you some basics on AI if you're a little bit uncertain about it, and tell you where you can go to find out more. But if you do want to tune in, we've already got a few shows live, so just search for the Top Music AI Podcast in the meantime. Till then, I'm Tim Topham, and you have been listening to the TopCast 400th episode. Thank you so much, and speak to you soon. How do you keep up to date with all the latest trends and research into music education? How do you connect with other teachers around the world and make sure your teaching stays fresh and relevant for students of all ages and stages, both now and into the future? I created our Top Music Pro membership to be the one-stop shop for music teaching resources, training, support, and community, and I'd love for you to come and join us inside. With over 40 comprehensive training courses, hundreds of teaching demonstrations and lesson plans, free monthly sheet music, discounts, and all the business and pedagogy support you could ever need, Top Music Pro is the community you've been looking for. If you're ready to level up your learning from the podcast and join thousands of other teachers in our global network, head over to topmusicpro.com today. If you enjoy this show and want to hear more of our work, be sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening today. For links and resources mentioned in this episode, visit us at topmusic.co/podcast or check out the show notes. I'm Tim Topham. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy your week ahead, and I'll catch you next time.